Thanks so much for tuning in to the Sustainable Brown Girl YouTube channel. This show exists to provide representation for women of color within the environmental space, to share their stories, and to inspire all to be more eco-friendly every day. I'm your host, Ariel Green. This is where you can see all of the full video podcast episodes. So be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Also, go follow us on Instagram at Sustainable Brown Girl. Enjoy! Today's featured Sustainable Brown Girl is Dr. Anjali Malik, a breast imaging radiologist and women's health advocate. She mentors and inspires women to take charge of their breast and ovarian health, all while promoting sustainability and plant-based nutrition. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Malik.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yay. So I always like to start at the beginning. Tell us how you became interested in sustainability.
So this goes way back. I actually was the kid who, in addition to doodling, hearts and circles and smiley faces, I would actually draw the reduce, reuse, recycle arrows on notes and pen pal letters and things like that, because not just because of the symbol, but also because I actually believed in that.
Right.
And there's like a funny story about me trying to donate like pocket money, like change, to the World Wildlife Federation. And being like, yeah, we can't accept this. It'll have to be, check or money order. So, so sort of wanting to save the planet, those types of whatever the like 80s and 90s slogans were.
Yeah.
Just hit home to me. I mean, whatever, campaign outreach they had tried definitely reached this 5-year-old, and it sort of has stuck with me since then. I also I spent a lot of my childhood in either India over the summers with my grandparents or in LA with my aunt and uncle and cousins. And in LA they've been recycling and aware of like the air pollution and smog, and so I would always hear about those things, see my family doing those types of things. And then in India, at least when I was growing up, my grandparents were definitely the reuse type, fix something if it's broken. Don't just like throw it out and get a new one. They went to the market every day. They took a bag, they got their vegetables. So these were sort of concepts that I was introduced to really early, just as like a way of living, not even as, trying to be sustainable. So I think it was just all of that came together, and then is now just the way that I try to live a sustainable lifestyle.
Yes, I love that. I am a child of the 90s too, and I definitely see how they were kind of like, priming us for this type of information.
Exactly.
So yes, I love that. So then what led you to become a doctor?
So I am the child of two physicians.
Okay.
South Asian background. And so in addition to having physicians who were parents, this is of course a strong part of our culture.
Yeah.
The doctor, lawyer, engineer concept. So it was always something that I was around. I basically was babysat by nurses at the hospital or in my mom's office. So I was exposed to it throughout my childhood. I still was very open-minded when I went to college. And I was a public health major at Johns Hopkins, which also I think plays into my sustainability pretty strongly. So one of my favorite movies growing up was Outbreak, Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo. Of course, Outbreak is no longer a funny movie these days, but it was a movie that I loved, and I was like, oh, I want to work for the CDC and be a virologist and save lives around the world and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, that all just kind of came together. I did do a lot of public health outreach when I was in college, a lot of work on trying to get healthcare resolutions passed and things like that. And I realized that even though I love public health, I loved the idea of working in public health. I was someone who was very goal oriented. And so becoming a physician where I could, potentially see those direct impacts of my work was something that I realized would be more meaningful to me.
Yes, I see. That makes total sense. So then how would you say like sustainability relates to the health industry?
I mean, I think they're very intertwined. Some might say they're completely separate, but I think if you're really looking at health holistically, then sustainability definitely plays in. So from, the types of food that we're consuming, we know that plant-based diets are the most sustainable diet in terms of climate change and carbon production. And we also know that plant-based diets are very healthy. And I say diet, not meaning like calorie restriction, but diet as in the types of foods that we're consuming. And so,
Right.
So we know that red meat, lots of carbon production, not great for our health. We know that processed foods, carbon production, waste, whether it's plastic or any other kind, chemicals that are produced in the process as well as put into the food, many of those go on to cause health problems. So I think when you're talking about diets, they're very intertwined. But even, we now know that particulate matter, that's a result of air pollution and climate change, can have a lot of deleterious health effects. Plastics can have health effects both directly through endocrine disruption, as well as, the microplastics that were now found in the blood, for example, might go on to have health effects. So I think that living a sustainable lifestyle and promoting and optimizing our health are very closely related.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because obviously there are environmental impacts that affect our health,
Right.
Like one of the first things that I switched, like when I started on my sustainable journey, was my deodorant, because I found out that, that aluminum can cause breast cancer. Is that true?
It is not. It's not true.
Okay. Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's not true. But so even though that is misinformation,
Yes.
the good byproduct of that is a lot of people switched to more sustainable options. So for me, for example, without being vendor specific, I do use a couple different brands that are packaged in paper, and their packaging is compostable. So for me, I love that it's compostable. I love that it's not producing plastic waste like other more mainstream brands are. I do also like that it's natural. It doesn't, I wasn't seeking out something that was aluminum free, but I do like that it's natural, and I think it works really well for me. So, I know women talk about not having as good of what they think deodorant and antiperspirant capabilities from the natural deodorants. And I will say, and this is not scientifically proven, but anecdotally, I feel like my vegan diet, as I went more plant-based and also coupled it with using natural deodorant, I was able to control any sweating in that region, or any, body odor, as it were.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was because I wasn't eating meat and dairy. So anecdotal, don't quote me on this, but
yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. So aluminum does not cause breast cancer, but if you're looking for a good sustainable option, the ones that are packaged in compostable packaging, or the other options such as like the crystals and things like that. Like if that works for you, if that makes you happy, totally fine with that. None of them are going to cause breast cancer.
Okay, well, good to know, because I based my entire life off of that, but that's okay. Well, while we're talking about breast cancer and different foods and I guess myths, I've also heard, and this question comes from Annie on Instagram, but she says that her mom's oncologist told her to avoid soy after her breast cancer diagnosis. Okay, let's talk more about that.
Knew this was going to come out. I had anticipated it the second you said it. So just to clarify, I am a breast imaging radiologist. I detect and diagnose breast cancer. I am a women's health advocate. So this is such an important question for me, both as a female, as a physician, and then as a plant-based person. So soy has phytoestrogens, which just means plant estrogens. And many, in fact, most breast cancers are estrogen and progesterone receptor positive. So imagine, a cell, and they have little spikes, kind of like what we've all seen now with the COVID spike protein, right? We all know what. So they have these little spikes, and they need estrogen or progesterone to park there and then amplify their growth. And so the idea was you increase the estrogen in the bloodstream and in the body, you increase your risk for breast cancer. And that is true when it is estrogen. But plant estrogens or phytoestrogens actually compete with our body's own estrogen. And so they can park in that spot and actually block our own estrogen from getting that parking spot and causing those changes. So phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens that are found in soy are not only safe, but potentially protective. And there have been studies shown, and I don't have those at the tip of my fingers, but I could certainly provide it if it's a link that you want to share later, that show that soy could help in increased survivability in breast cancer survivors.
Wow.
So, now we are talking about unprocessed soy. So, we're not talking about the fake meat soy thing in the freezer aisle. Those are certainly fun alternatives on occasion, but I'm talking about tofu, tempeh, edamame, miso, soy sauce, things like that. I'm not talking about any of the fake, overly processed soys. Those are going to have their own health impacts and not have any of the benefits of soy.
I see. So does that also apply to how, I guess there's another myth in regards to like soy impacting fertility? Is it the same type of deal as with breast cancer?
So I'm not an REI, which is the kind of physician that deals with fertility, but I'm not aware of there being any impact on fertility whatsoever.
Okay.
Again, it is not the same as the estrogen in our bloodstream. What we call endogenous estrogen. And then it's not the same either as exogenous estrogen. So people who are taking estrogen either in the form of oral contraceptives or hormone replacement therapy, or for example, a trans woman who's on estrogen, those are mimicking. So those are what we call bioidentical hormones. They are mimicking our endogenous estrogen from an outside source. But soy is completely separate from that.
Okay. Well, again, good to know. I think you are out here busting some myths today. I love it.
On a Sunday morning here to.
Yeah. Right. I love it so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So then aluminum doesn't cause breast cancer. Soy doesn't impact breast cancer. So then what types of like
It doesn't impact it, but it doesn't increase it.
Okay, doesn't increase it.
So it can potentially protect us and increase survivability.
Yes, so the complete opposite of what we were taught.
Exactly.
So then what other types of like environmental impacts can like impact your breast and reproductive health?
So good question. And just to back it up, let's talk about what this is not a sustainability topic, but our top two risk factors for the development of breast cancer are being female and aging, neither of which we can change. Even if we change our, gender, if you have had estrogen in your body, either at birth or at some point in your life, not at birth because we don't have estrogen in birth, but at some point in your
gotcha.
Puberty, at puberty or at some point in your life, you are at risk for the development of breast cancer. So cisgender women, transgender men, if they did not choose to do that before puberty, and then aging. And this is not like Botox related anti-aging. This is like if you are a human being and you are aging, you're at risk for the development of breast cancer. And then other things like family history, genetic mutation. If you were treated for like a lymphoma or a thyroid cancer and you had radiation and it hit your chest level, those are all things that place us at risk. There are some racial and ethnic risk factors, Ashkenazi Jewish women and men, and those in the Black population can be at higher risk. So those are what we call the non-modifiable risk factors. You can't change them. The modifiable risk factors then are where we start talking about lifestyle and environment. So the top two that we talk about that are things that we can control, or at least try to, are alcohol consumption and obesity. So, you know, not fat shaming here, totally body positive, but we know that our adipose tissue or normal fat cells do produce estrogen. And so the more that we have, the more estrogen that we have circulating in our body. And that is in addition to whatever the normal hormone axis is producing. And so obesity is a risk factor for the development of breast cancer. Now, you know, this is not related to like BMI. So for some people, they have like a lot of muscle mass. So, and when I say BMI, it's not related to like weight on a scale. This is actually related to like amount of body fat. And then alcohol consumption. So no amount of alcohol has been shown to be safe. That said, everything in moderation. You know, we made fresh pasta last night and had red wine. And that's going to happen. I'm not going to change that, but, even one drink per day, can place women at risk. So I don't drink during the week, you know, and I like, those are the changes that I choose to make. Or sometimes I still don't even drink at social events. So, you know, though, because I know the risk, and it even outweighs, for example, the like red wine is good for your heart, right? So
yeah,
there are a lot of good things for our heart: exercise, not smoking, you know, plant-based diets, etc. So there are a lot of other good things that I do for my heart. When I'm having a glass of red wine, I'm not like, ooh, here's to my heart health, right? So
yes.
So, you know, if you want to have that you have that in your head while you're drinking it, that's fine. But overall, alcohol is a risk factor. We talked about how aluminum is not, soy is not. So it's another thing. When I mentioned radiation, so women are concerned that the radiation from their mammogram might be causing their breast cancer, or like the radiation in the airport scanners, right? Like when you have to walk through that thing. And the truth is, neither do. So we actually get a ton of background radiation just by being exposed to the sun. And we get even more, for example, when we fly in an airplane, because we are that much closer to the sun. We have that much less of the atmosphere protecting us from the sun. And so actually the amount of radiation that we get from a mammogram is equivalent to the amount that we would get flying across the United States. So like a transcontinental flight. And so that's something I think that's important to know, that it's not going to be the cause of a breast cancer. Yeah. And then there are other, you know, things that are just not as well studied, like vitamin D. You know, vitamin D has been linked to basically everything at this point, right? It's good for this, it's good for that, you know, if you have normal levels and things like that. And some other vitamin levels that are just not well studied. But for the most part, when we are talking about breast cancer, we are talking about hormone exposure. So alcohol does upregulate estrogen production. One thing that also is protective, and again, plant-based diet goes back to plant-based diets, is fiber. So fiber can be protective and downregulate the estrogen production. And then again, on the diet front, not just breast cancer, but multiple kinds of cancer. The processed meats, like the bacons and bologna, red meat, they have been linked to multiple solid tumors. So not just breast cancer. And then, you know, there's no strong link between dairy and breast cancer. There have been some studies looking at it. And there hasn't been a strong link. But so when it comes to diet, I just always encourage a healthy, balanced diet, you know, plant predominant or plant-based if possible. Totally avoid processed meats. Try to avoid processed foods. Limit your alcohol. Don't smoke. There's just no reason to. And then, you know, just live a healthy lifestyle. 150 minutes of exercise per week, which also plays into sustainability. Walk, bike, Don't drive, walk to mass transit, do things that are,
Yes.
You're getting a double, like 2 for 1 there if you're getting exercise and being sustainable for your
Yes.
to work.
Exactly. Yes. I love all of that. So you talked about like the, like habits that you can change to improve your breast health and, health overall. But what about, I've seen a lot like parabens and sulfates and stuff can also impact like your reproductive health and can cause cancer. Is that true? Are you going to bust all the myths today?
So, exactly. So I will say that when we are talking about skincare, as an example, it is a little bit harder to talk about whether those chemicals can cause infertility and cancer because we have such slow levels that enter the bloodstream. So can those chemicals cause cancer and, impact fertility if you were to directly ingest them? First of all, they would have a lot of impacts if you directly ingested them. But sort of speaking hypothetically, in a bubble, the answer is yes. But do we get that level of exposure and toxicity when using things on our skin, which even though it's the largest organ, it's not necessarily what we are exposed to at the skin level is not necessarily going to get absorbed into the bloodstream and then cross into those cells to have those effects. So I guess the answer is not necessarily, those levels haven't been shown. Do I use clean beauty products when possible? Yes. Do I feel like I've been duped by the clean beauty market into believing things? Maybe, but I still use the, clean deodorants, natural deodorants, because they're in compostable packaging. I still use a lot of clean beauty products because they're in reusable packaging, compostable packaging, no packaging at all. So, that's just as important to me. We do know that plastics can impact our fertility, and we do know that plastics can have, BPA. And BPA is the only one that we've really well studied, right? There are actually multiple kinds of bisphenol, BPA. There's BP, BPB, et cetera. So there are a lot of different ones. And we do know that they can have cancer and fertility impact. So the plastic packaging that those come in, the plastic packaging that food comes in, it's, even if potentially the chemicals wouldn't have an impact on my health, the plastic itself does. We know it does.
Right.
And if it doesn't have a direct impact on my health at that moment, it will go on to potentially have an impact if that plastic goes into the, oceans and into the, enters our water systems. The microplastics in the blood is a concern.
Yes. Right.
We don't know what the health impacts are yet, but we know that particulate matter from the air has all these deleterious effects. The PM2 can cause multiple different kinds of cancer, to include breast cancer. Not cause so much as, increased risk, and allergies and lung disease. And so if you were to sort of extrapolate and think about how if particulate matter from the air can cause that, then microplastics are particulate matter. They could potentially have those same deleterious effects. So,
yes. Okay. Yeah, that I totally, I'm following what you're saying. Right. And you bringing up the microplastics in the blood, that was a question that came from one of our Instagram followers. And she wanted to know if you had seen any effects of microplastics in the blood, or if you know of any.
So we only recently realized that there are microplastics in the blood.
Right.
There was that recent, discovery that came out. So we don't know what the long-term effects are. They'll continue to study it. We don't know what they are. I also want to circle back just for one moment for in regards to beauty products. So again, about how, do parabens, do things like that, phthalates. And the answer is that we don't know because we don't see the levels, that we think might cause it. But what we do know is things like chemical hair straighteners and some chemical permanent dyes that are used, particularly in the Black community, the hair straighteners that are used. can increase the risk of breast cancer.
Okay.
That is, is proven. We do know that it is a link, and it's a risk to a community that is already at increased risk. So we know that Black women have higher rates of the BRCA gene mutation. That's not the only gene mutation that can be linked to breast cancer, but it is one that is known to cause breast and ovarian cancer, as well as colon melanoma. And it is seen in higher rates in the Ashkenazi Jewish population and in Black women. And so if they're already at higher risk for breast cancer and at higher risk for a genetic mutation, and then they're chemically straightening their hair, and we just know that we're putting an already vulnerable population at increased risk. So that is something I can say with certainty within the beauty industry it needs to change.
Yes, 100%. I'm glad that there's been a shift, within Black women to stop straightening their hair, chemically, stop using the relaxers and stuff. So yeah, that's, good to know. So if you're still doing it, maybe cut back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, in the sustainability industry, we talk a lot about like reducing waste and stuff. And I know that one big within the medical industry, like with the gloves and all of the things that happen within a doctor's office can seem very wasteful.
Yes.
So do you think that there is any way to avoid or, kind of reduce the waste within the medical industry?
So that is a great question. And that is definitely something that a lot of physician leaders, myself to be included, are working towards. So there's an organization called Healthcare Without Harm. It's just one of many that is taking sustainability very seriously. I'm also part of a group, Radiologists for a Sustainable Future. And, groups like this are wanting to work with industry leaders to see ways that we can reduce waste. So, for example, when I do a biopsy, of course, we want it to be sterile. We don't want to cause or introduce infection into the body. So yes, it's like first you wear this pair of gloves, then you wear that pair of gloves, and then you use this drape and that drape, and then you open the biopsy thing. But, everything is plastic wrapped. And sometimes you'll open up a biopsy kit and you don't even need several of the things that are in there. And they just get thrown away. And then there's no recycling for some of these things that are not even introduced to the body. There are no bodily fluids on them. They're, if they were in a non-medical scenario, they would be recycled because they are fully plastic, but we're not recycling them because it's a medical facility and you just don't do that, right? Everything's either biohazard or trash. So yeah, I think a lot of these things need to change. Why are they wrapped in plastic, packaged in plastic? Why aren't we recycling things that can be, and of course we know most things don't go on to be recycled anyway, but, and then, things that we're using that, earlier in medicine were reusable. Yes. They used to use glass syringes. Is that practical? Not necessarily, right? Like we drop them and autoclaving takes time and we see way more patients than, maybe people were in the past, and, glass of course comes with risks of breaking and things like that. But we just have to, I think, pause and think about, do all of these things need to be plastic? Do all of these things need to be single use? Is there a way to continue to mitigate infection, exposure and risk while also being sustainable? So these are all conversations that, we're trying to have in medicine now. It is tough, with all the other regulations that we have to follow when it comes to safety, to also think about sustainability. But there are enough people in the field now that recognize that climate change, it has huge health impacts, both direct and indirect. So, whether it's particulate matter, causing allergies, lung disease, and cancer, or things like wildfires and hurricanes disrupting healthcare, delivery of healthcare. When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, in addition to obviously devastating, large large portions of land and affecting people's lives and affecting their access to healthcare. It actually affected healthcare everywhere because there's a huge medical facility or plant that was creating all the saline bags. So saline, like basically salt water, something that we use across medicine for infusions, for hydration. And it was affecting chemotherapy patients. It was affecting, emergency medicine. It was affecting everybody because there was a shortage.
Right.
And then you think, right now about like the supply chain issues that we're having. Climate change only exacerbates things like that when we have these natural disasters, et cetera. So there are both direct and indirect impacts of climate change. And it's not just also like the particulate matter that I keep referring to, but of course, sun exposure for skin cancer and melanoma, and actually things like there are toxins. Aflatoxin is a toxin that grows in hot climates and can increase the risk of liver cancer.
Wow.
And so, there are a lot of things that we, don't talk about that are very serious risks and impacts from climate change. So.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, those are things that I had never really considered before, but now that you talk about them, it's like, yeah, like the medical industry is like, or can be greatly impacted by climate change, and not just on our health, but just like how it operates. So yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I would, yeah.
And again, it also creates so much carbon, right? So, there are definitely things that we need to look into, not just the delivery of healthcare. So not just the medications and the supplies that we're using and but also in how we're doing it. Like, do we need to be using this much energy to, provide, AC and heat and light and whatever? Are there ways to sort of ramp down at night? Should we, can we do this solar? Can we do, we have these huge hospitals have, for example, and I'm not saying that I know everything about hospital architecture and management, but helipads for helicopters to land on for, when you're transferring patients or accepting patients for trauma or, burn victims, things like that. And could there be solar panels up there? Could there be like renewable geothermal energy? Something. I think that we really, really need to aggressively, quite frankly, be thinking of ways to decrease the carbon production.
Yes.
Healthcare, because it's just a vicious cycle.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely need to, change infrastructure all around. But I think hospitals are definitely a great place to start or, definitely look into.
Right.
So, yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Malik. And let everyone know where they can find you online or, everything that you want to tell people.
all of the things. Yes.
All of the things.
You can find me at Anjali Malik MD on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Clubhouse, which I don't use anymore, but LinkedIn. And then my website is anjalimalikmd.com.
Awesome. Please go follow her. She gives all the tips and all of the information about breast health and radiology and just sustainable plant-based tips as well. And our last question is, what does being a sustainable brown girl mean to you?
Well, I think it just means caring about myself and my planet, just doing everything that I can to optimize my own health, to care for the planet and therefore care for the people around me. So that's why I am sustainable.
Yes, I love it. Yay. Thank you so much for joining us and busting all of these myths. Like, I'm going to have some meditation time and reassess my life after this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Don't leave just yet. Click here to hear from another sustainable brown girl, or click here to watch the full playlist from this season.